Okay, that first technical interview, it can be pretty nerve-wracking, right? Especially for JavaScript. But what if I told you there are a handful of core questions that always come up, the ones that interviewers use to really see if you know your stuff? Well, today, we're going to dive deep and absolutely nail those questions together. So, picture it. You're in the interview room. The interviewer slides the laptop over and says, "Let's start with some fundamentals." Your heart's pounding, right? Don't worry. Think of this as our little coaching session. We're going to make sure that when that moment actually happens, you're not just ready, you're totally confident. And look, we're not just going to memorize answers here. That's not the point. We are tackling the big foundational ideas that show you truly get how JavaScript works under the hood. By the time we're done, you'll get the what, sure, but more importantly, you'll understand the why. Why these specific questions are the ones that separate the good candidates from the great ones. All right, first up, the classic opener. You can almost guarantee you'll get this one. So, can you explain the differences between var, let, and const? And listen, this isn't just about syntax. This question is a test. It tells the interviewer if you're stuck in 2014 or if you're writing modern, clean JavaScript. How you answer this one really sets the tone for the whole interview. So let's really break this down. The biggest deal breaker here is scope. You see, var is function scoped, which is kind of leaky and can lead to some really weird bugs. But let and const, they're block scoped. That means they only live inside the closest pair of curly braces, like in an if statement or a for loop. Way cleaner. Then you've got reassignment. With const, once you give it a value, that's it. It's locked in. This makes your code so much easier to reason about. Pro tip, telling your interviewer you use const by default, that's a huge plus. Okay, now for that weird concept called hoisting. It's not as scary as it sounds. With var, what the JavaScript engine actually does is it kind of peeks ahead, sees the var foo declaration, and hoists it to the top of its scope. But, and this is the key part, it leaves the assignment, the equals 1, right where it was. So when you console.log foo at the beginning, JavaScript knows the variable exists, but it hasn't been given a value yet. That's why you get undefined instead of a flat-out error. So, you might be thinking, okay, that undefined thing with var sounds like a bug waiting to happen. And you'd be right. That's where let and const come to the rescue. They are also hoisted, technically, but they introduce this safety net called the temporal dead zone, or TDZ. It's basically a period of time where the variable exists, but you can't touch it. If you try to access it before it's officially declared in your code, JavaScript just says, nope, and throws a reference error. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's JavaScript protecting you from yourself. All right, you crushed the variables question. The interviewer is impressed, but now they hit you with the next boss level, the this keyword. Honestly, how this works is probably one of the trickiest parts of JavaScript. If you can explain this clearly, it proves you really understand something deep about the language, what we call the execution context, which is just a fancy way of saying how and where your code is being run. So how do you solve the mystery of this? You don't guess. There's a set of rules, a clear hierarchy. The value of this is determined by how a function is called, not where it's written. And here are the 5 main rules you need to know. Think of this as your playbook. If it's a method call, like myObject.doSomething, then this is just myObject. Easy. If you can just walk down this list in your head during an interview, you'll be able to figure out this every single time. And this right here, this is why arrow functions were such a game changer. Back in the day, if you used a regular function inside another method, like for a callback, the value of this would get all messed up. It would lose its context. People had to do these ugly hacks like var that equals this. It was a mess. But arrow functions? They don't play by those rules. They don't have their own this. They just borrow it from whatever scope they're sitting inside. It's so much cleaner, and it solves a whole category of bugs. Okay, you are absolutely crushing this interview. The interviewer leans back, impressed. All right, they say, let's talk about async. This is it, the final boss, the question that truly separates the juniors from the seniors. How does a single-threaded language like JavaScript do multiple things at once without just freezing? The answer is one of the most elegant ideas in programming, the event loop. To get how this all works, we first need to meet the main players. It's like a little factory. First, you have the call stack. That's your main worker, doing one job at a time. Then you have the web APIs, which are like specialized helpers in the background handled by the browser. They take care of slow stuff like timers or fetching data. And finally, you have 2 waiting areas, 2 queues. a super important high-priority VIP line called the microtask queue, and a regular line called the macrotask queue. All right, let's walk through some code. Step 1, the easy stuff. Anything that's synchronous, like a simple console.log, gets pushed onto the call stack, runs right away, and then gets popped off. Console.log start goes on, runs, comes off. Then console.log end goes on, runs, comes off. Simple as that. No waiting around.
Now here's where it gets interesting. When the engine sees set timeout, it says, whoa, this is going to take a while. I'm not waiting. So it hands the whole thing off to a web API in the browser. The browser starts the timer in the background. Once that timer is done, the browser takes the callback function and drops it into the macro task queue, the regular waiting line.
But wait, what about promises? Promises are different. They're special. When a promise resolves, its callback doesn't go into the same line as set timeout. Nope, it's considered a high-priority microtask, so it gets to jump the line and go straight into that VIP microtask queue. This is a super important detail. Okay, so all the main synchronous code is done, the call stack is empty. Now the event loop, who is like the manager of this whole operation, steps in. And the first thing it asks is there anything in the VIP line, anything in the microtask queue? And in this case, yes, there is. So before it even thinks about looking at the regular line, it runs everything in the microtask queue until it's empty. And that's why promise 1 gets logged next. So only after the microtask queue is completely empty does the event loop finally go, okay, let's check the regular line. It pulls just one item from the macrotask queue, like our set timeout callback, and runs it. And then, and this is the part people forget, it immediately goes back to check the microtask queue again, just in case that last task created a new high-priority job. This loop, check microtasks, run one macrotask, check microtasks again, is the secret sauce of the whole system. Phew, you've made it through the 3 hardest parts. The interviewer is definitely impressed. Now they're just going to throw a few quick-fire questions at you to round things out. Let's knock these out of the park. First one, double equals versus triple equals. This is an easy win. Just remember this. Double equals is the loose one. It tries to be helpful by changing types for you, what we call type coercion, which almost always leads to confusing bugs. Triple equals is strict. It checks if the value and the type are the same. Simple rule of thumb for your career and the interview, just always use triple equals. End of story.
Next question, tell me about client-side storage. Here's how you break it down. Cookies are old school, small, and sent with every network request, so they're good for session IDs. Local storage is newer, has more space, and it sticks around forever, or at least until you clear it. Perfect for user settings, like dark mode. And session storage is just like local storage, but it's temporary. It gets wiped out the second you close the browser tab. Great for saving data in a form you haven't submitted yet.
And that's it. You've done it. The interviewer smiles. By walking them through these concepts, you didn't just spit out facts. You showed them how you think, how you reason about code. And that is what gets you the job offer. So let's just quickly recap the absolute must-knows. Number 1. Use const first and only use let if you know a variable needs to change. 2. Master the 5 rules of this so you always know its context. 3. Microtasks always run before macrotasks. Always. And 4. Use triple equals for comparisons to avoid weird bugs. These aren't just tips for passing an interview. They're the rules for writing great code. So, you've got the knowledge. You've aced the interview. Now the fun part begins. The only real question left is, what amazing thing are you going to build first? Because this is just the beginning of your journey.